Well, glad to have you back. Now, a major reform introduced by the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 is a deregulation of the pricing regime for the sale of petroleum products in the country. PIA also repeals the 2003 Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, empowered the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency to determine the pricing policy of petroleum products. But the regulation could not have an immediate significant impact on the pump price of premium auto spirit due to long-standing subsidy scheme implemented by the federal government of Nigeria. However, in its inaugural address, President Bola Tinubu said fuel subsidy is gone. Well, joining me to talk about this and some very important industry issues is a senior partner, commercial and energy practice, Candel, Mr. Israel Aye. Thank you so much. It's good to have you on the program. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, I would like to start this way. Ideally, when the price of crude is looking very, very good, we should be smiling to the banks and having increased reserves where the FX should be coming in as expected. But at the moment, we are even paying more for landing costs, and it ends up at the pump, also making it higher one way or the other. Can you explain the economics of this to us? Let us understand this better.
Okay, I mean, this is not so much a matter of economics. This is simply just the fact that we're not selling. And I mean, the body light is selling for about also minus $86 at the moment, which is high. Normally, high price regimes don't bode well for us. Because, again, I mean, they typically wouldn't bode well for downstream prices because the feedstock for the production of PMS, DPK, AGO, all the sort of products is crude. And so that sort of goes up. So it's not a Nigerian thing, it's every environment. Now, but you'd expect that in the context of the petroleum industry, that there is some compensation in our case with revenues from food sales. Unfortunately, we're doing, and told the last sort of data I heard, and I don't know if this is that I heard is we're probably exporting less than 1 million barrels a day. Our export capacity, even in bad times, is supposed to be at least 2 million barrels a day. The growth aspiration is around 3 to 4 million barrels a day. That's the sort of levels where we would get a good shock of funds coming in to then be able to buy these products and still leave a lot more left to sort out other things. Because again, unfortunately, we're a very import-dependent economy at this point in time. So those are the gaps we're looking at. So it's not a big economics. It's simply just that some of the old issues have not gone away yet.
Our conversation, but from the point where subsidy was removed till as we speak, there is this gist. Let me put it that way. Everyone believes that the price at the pump will continue to increase, and that's the fear. At the moment, diesel is also a bit on the high side, not like it used to be. So that fear, everyone believes that deregulation comes with its positives and negatives. Do you agree with that, Mr. A?
Well, I mean, it was always going to be a difficult call. You know, again, I mean, this is very vexed. And if you remember the last time I was on the program, I actually did mention that it wasn't just a pure economics issue. It was a socio political and economic issue, particularly when it comes to Nigeria. There's an emotional dimension where people think that because we're a crude producing nation, then the products that come out of crude should be available almost for free. Unfortunately, we have fed that notion over many years. Coupled with the fact that on the larger scale, the average Nigerian isn't doing very well in terms of earning vis-a-vis the cost of living. So standard of living is collapsing, and people then have a sense of entitlement that, look, if there is something that the central government can do to make these products available literally on free, it should happen. But again, it's a conundrum because the central government can't. I mean, it's struggled with it over many years, but it really had come to the point where our expenditure trying to sustain that regime basically was canceling income completely. And so, I mean, that was beyond bankrupt. So it was always going to be a difficult issue. Even in the best times, it was going to be a difficult issue. And at a level, perhaps the issue is really not the price of the pump price of petroleum products, but it is the ability of the people to purchase, the pump price. I mean, to purchase those commodities at the price that they're sold. Because again, when you compare if you compare the pump price with what is obtainable in many other parts of not only the world, but indeed in Africa, then you find that we're probably not the worst off, as it were. So in the short term, the prices are going to go up. If we're able to sustain the deregulation regime, hopefully we'll be able to bring on stream a few more refineries, improve the capacity for refining. And I don't know that would make prices as cheap as, so that's sort of a parallel we've drawn, or maybe in times past between it and telecoms is probably not entirely correct because, whether you're producing here, the only element to take up will be the transportation element. Okay, but the important thing is to then hopefully tweak the other aspects of the economy so that the earning power of the average citizen goes up, and what it currently sells for would not be a pain as it currently is.
Oh, Mr. Aye, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. The last, we lost the, I think, network issues towards the end of your sentence, but we're able to make sense of it. Now, staying with the downstream and FX scarcity, my first discussion, we talked around that we see the CBN introducing a new portal for verification and all of that. But I'm concerned about how marketers can get back into this business and maybe start to bring in products. With the challenge of FX being on the other side, do you think that is possible? How attractive is it now to bring in products?
Well, I mean, again, I was going to say early days, but that's probably a cop out. How attractive it is to bring in product. You see, importers will bring in product to the extent that they can sell. Okay, and statements say, and very important. I understand what the statements are, where they're coming from, why they were made. That prices were not going up. Again, probably wouldn't help because to the degree or extent that people feel that they cannot recover an economic, make an economic return on whatever they have invested, then that is going to serve as a disincentive. Okay, but and that's the point. But if people know, I mean, and again, which is probably part of what we have we've been saying, that when it comes to the deregulated regime, you can no longer fix prices, but you can regulate prices. And what it means is that you should have a framework, very clear framework, that takes into consideration how petroleum products prices are arrived at. And those would include things like the feedstock costs, freight, exchange rates, port charges, lightering charges, perhaps a margin for financing costs, jetting throughput charge, storage, distribution, perhaps tax, and an allowable margin. And so it's clear to everybody, and of course, there will probably be a department within the midstream authority that benchmarks, some of those inputs so that it's not a free-for-all again. That's what price regulation looks like, you know. And yes, within that sort of framework, then players who have the license and the resources to be able to go in might find the incentive to do so. But as long as that space remains opaque, and somebody can wake up and say, well, there's not going to be a price increase, then our road is far.
Mrs. L, I'd like to also ask this question. At the moment, the level of consumption of PMS, I've spoken to marketers and some other industry players, and they are saying that there's this drop. Some will say maybe because of the price. Some will say maybe they're not able to smuggle anymore because it's not really as attractive as it used to be. Well, what are your concerns with regards to level of consumption? What can we really do to get accurate data?
Well, I mean, if you create an opportunity for arbitrage any day, if you create an opportunity for arbitrage, people will take it, you know. And that's that huge debate when people say things, for example, that, oh, you know, you can't, I'm not sure if the word is legislate criminality. Or perhaps some people say, oh, you know, the problem with the petroleum industry is not subsidy. You should indeed just police the corruption. My sense is that you can't police corruption on a large scale. You know, you have to fix corruption structurally. You know, and it is only when you have something around 5%, then you can police around 5%. Even up to 10% for corruption can become too difficult to police. So that's a systemic issue. And have you seen the northern border? The hundreds and hundreds of kilometers across it. I've been out to visit that. Have you seen our what's it called now? Western, western border, land borders, to the extent that we're not, in the sea. You know, so the point really is that as long as there's the opportunity for people to take cheaper product from, you know, point A to point B and make an arbitrage, then you're going to get a distortion of the market conditions. What we've probably seen is a correction of what our real demand levels are. And I would say let's run it for a bit, and then whatever we settle at will represent, and that's the point. Equivalent jurisdictions as ours, we've said it over time, you know, we're posting numbers that are similar to what we're looking at now, about half of what we were carrying at the time as the consumption levels. Now, is that to say that if tomorrow you reintroduce a subsidy regime and you peg your importation levels at, say, the current levels that you fixed it? No. Again, because we would have reopened the door to arbitrage, and those numbers will go up again. And of course, no government would kind of endure, you know, the optics of no fuel, long queues, a comatose situation. So you create a catch-22 situation for yourself. So that's probably the issue around there. So perhaps the short response to what you've asked me is that the numbers we're seeing now is closer to the reflection of reality. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
Indeed, I think I agree along that line too. Let me now follow up with the PIA. I know we've gone this route many times, and you've been here to help us understand this. The PIA, I think one of the objectives of this is to attract investment into Nigeria's oil and gas space, which remains very important. Even gas, we have a gas ministry now. You know, there's that focus on gas. We have solid minerals, and we have all of that. But I want to ask you, when do we start to expect investors to really, you know, come into this sector as expected and take charge? I think there should be a transition period. How long are we going to wait?
Well, I mean, look, Tolu, the conversation has gone, we waited so long for the PIA to be passed, advocated. I mean, I remember that I spent a good part of my lifetime, nothing less than 10 years, but not entirely, but sometime on the road advocate. I mean, because again, there were some organizations that did mobilize me as an advocate for the passage of the PIA. And again, I mean, we said whatever kind of PIA was passed was better than a no PIA. One of the arguments that we made. Today, I'm not entirely sure if I feel that way, if I can say so. Whatever version of the PIA was passed, I mean, would appear to be an excellent piece of legislation for like 20 years ago. And I know that's a very serious statement to make. Where are we today? We're looking at the energy transition. You hear things like gas is the transition fuel for Nigeria. But that's the head in the sand approach, because those who make the critical decisions with respect to this don't recognize that concept. The European countries in America, Americans who are driving the transition agenda, they're not transitioning through gas to renewables. They're transitioning away from fossil fuel to renewable. So what you're seeing is a progressive constraint on funding, available funding for production upstream. Because again, the sense I get is that whenever we talk about gas, we're talking about midstream development. Yeah, we're talking about monetizing gas. We're talking about harnessing associated gas. We're probably talking about drilling non-associated gas and getting those to the market. But the reality is that, I mean, take the gas master, the gas master plan, and that was pre-PIA. I was part of that group. I remember then I was in-house with one of the majors, and we worked extensively on that to the point that we got the aggregator company, which is based in Abuja. But unfortunately, so many years down the road, if I look at it, and I'm being absolutely honest, I think that was a flop. Why did it fail? It failed simply because the volumes were not there to allocate. That entity was supposed to requalify entities that wanted gas, manage demands, and allocate gas. But the volumes were not there. That was because, again, for a variety of reasons, the IOCs who managed large portions of the production at the time just did not think that it made sense. It didn't make economic sense for them to do any gas development. They preferred to flare. That's changed a bit, and a lot of local companies today have gas development programs. The flares are considerably down, and there's a flare program in place, which hasn't been activated, by the way. But what I'm saying, in effect, is that Nigeria and other oil-producing states within the continent of Africa need to raise very compelling advocacy cases to see perhaps if they can get the international community to make an exception development in the short term. We're talking about a 20, 25, 30, 35-year program, because as long as you can't find funding for those development upstreams, any program you put in place for midstream development will come to naught, because you don't have the molecules to process, to refine, to do whatever it is you need to do midstream, and then to deliver to the markets. Not to mention the fact as well that even LNG markets are drying up. I mean, I was on a forum just a couple of days ago, and somebody gave a very clarifying and very frank and brutal feedback to say they probably would struggle to see another market. I mean, a market for any project beyond the Train 7 for us, for example. But again, the folks in LNG will probably be better placed to speak to those kinds of data. But the point I'm making is that this organization that we're banding around the place is not going to help us. What do we need to do? We need to make clear investment proposals to the international community. I mean, mixed with perhaps a bit of moral suasion, because again, the things that are driving the energy transition will be concerns around climate change, and we did not contribute to the deterioration of the climate. And so we really do. I don't want to say we're entitled to, but I think we deserve to be able to monetize the resources that are in our grounds. We deserve to be able to monetize those. We deserve to be able to bring them out of the ground and lift our people out of poverty and get our people to some degree of prosperity. And investors can make a lot of money participating with us. And those are the kinds of proposals we need to be making. And until we get those kinds of consensus around it, or perhaps provide alternative funding options and markets, then everything we're binding are just slogans. And 1, 2, 3 years down the road, so we'll be here talking, saying the same thing and throwing around the same slogans that mean nothing.
Interesting talk. It's always good having you on the program. I've been speaking to Mr. Iselaye, partner, commercial and energy law practice. Thank you so much for your time on the show and your intelligent contributions. We wish you a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Well, interesting.
Returning back very soon.